Hello, BookTube. I've got a random list of 10 forthcoming books for you on a hot, hazy, humid Sunday. Just to see if any of these interest you. Maybe you want to put some of them on your list. Check them out at your library or library to order them or whatnot. We'll start with this one. This is an anthology. It's called Dear California. It's a collection of diaries and letters, journal entries about California by people who live there. Mostly famous people, lots of famous writers, but also others. These sorts of things are endlessly fascinating to me, whether they are just in general or whether they are location or time specific, because you're going to see the same locales, the same notes struck over and over again by people who live decades apart and did not know each other. I love it. If you, and of course I lived in California, so if you live in California or live there and love it, this might be something you would want. And then the next one is for you Tudor fans out there. This is by John Guy and Julia Fox. John Guy, of course, being the dean of living Tudor historians. And this is Hunting the Falcon, the courtship and marriage of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. A book just dedicated to that. Henry chased after her for years, and she denied him what he wanted most for years because she didn't want to end up like her sister. Her sister Mary had been chased by the king and then allowed him into her bed. And the minute that happened, his interest faded. She had a son, but it wasn't enough for Henry. He loved the unattainable. And Mary made no requests for herself. It was largely Cardinal Wolsey who set her up on her feet once the king had discarded her. The king largely forgot about her. Anne Boleyn, her sister, had been trained in the courtly arts of love in France and did not want that to happen to her. Once she tried, once she secured the king's fascination, she wanted to make sure that she got something out of the deal. A non-negotiable something. Of course, we all know she got a lot more than she bargained for, but this is all about that. This is all about the courtship and the marriage, and presumably the great matter and the end of the marriage and whatnot. It's a fantastic story. Just no matter how often you've read it, if the execution is good, you can certainly stand to read it again. So we will see. I can't imagine that the execution won't be good. Then we have this is sort of a walking through nature, a natural history type book of a type that I tend to really love. I'm willing to excuse a lot of faults in books like these. This is by Kieran Sidhu, and it's called I Can Hear the Cuckoo. And it's a tour through Wales, through the wilds of Wales, where I have been many, many times. I didn't notice much. I tramped over every inch of Wales. I didn't notice much in the way of wildlife. Certainly not large, charismatic wildlife. I really don't think much of it exists in Wales. I entered a valley once, probably 50 years ago, with my dogs and a whole bunch of other dogs who weren't mine. They were mine for the time being, but they weren't going to stay with me. And we were told, I must have been told the minute I got within 10 miles of this village that I'd best watch the dogs because there is a beast that roams the hills. And the closer we got to town, the more I got warned about that you should I'm warning you about the beast. Those dogs of yours aren't safe. I didn't say anything to anybody there, especially the person who ended up being my host, who was a pretty loud proponent of this beast. I didn't say that aside from giant Pliocene holdovers in the animal kingdom, there's nothing that a well-orchestrated pack of dogs needs to worry about. Okay, if they don't have to worry about a 1,000-pound grizzly bear, they're not going to have to worry about any beast that you can provide for them. And my dogs were well organized. They might have been sloppy and crazy and all sorts of zany nuts when I allowed them all their free time, which was 99% of the time. But when I was in charge of them, when we were out and about and we needed to pay attention to business, they were a well-orchestrated pack. And a lion will run from a well-orchestrated pack of dogs. So I knew that I didn't need to worry, but on top of that, of course, that induced me to go out into the wilderness, up onto those hills, and see for myself. And my boys brought back exactly what my own senses told me, which is that there's nothing that lives here, nothing at all. Nothing like what you're describing. I was telling them to look for danger, and they were coming back totally confused. But it's a beautiful country, Wales. I read just in the TLS this week that some of the tourism billboards say, "Welcome to Wales." don't stay long, or enjoy Wales and then go home. So this will be fun. It'll be fun to look through. I hope it's well done. Then we have a writer I love. Some of you will probably be on the other side of the fence here. This is N.T. Wright, and this is Tom Wright's new book is Into the Heart of Romans. Paul's letter to the Romans is, I would say, arguably his favorite thing that's ever been written. He studied it a lot, but this will not be a study of Romans. There'll be a lot of proper textual exegesis in here. There'll be a lot of that, a lot more than his detractors tend to say. But this will be largely homiletics. This will be largely extrapolating Paul's writing in Romans to a much broader vision of the church and worship just in general. And I don't know if it's just a weakness on me, or maybe there are a couple of other reasons that might be less negotiable, but I will read anything this author writes. And I'm sure that, I have listened to him endlessly on Romans. I'm sure that this book will send me back to Paul's letters to the Romans. I'm sure that it will. But I'm going to read it anyway, so I'm going to enjoy it too, even when I'm sure that I'll be turning pages and saying, well, okay, but that was a reach, or, oh, that's Codswallop and you know it, or that is just you preaching. There's nothing to do with the text. That's just you preaching. I'm sure that there'll be moments when I say all that. I do in every one of his books, but I'm still going to read it. I'm still going to enjoy it. Then we have something that I have not got a finished copy of yet. I kind of want to wait, because I think the finished copy is probably illustrated. This is by, get this name, Fuchisa Dunlop. What I wouldn't give to be called Fuchisa. This is Invitation to a Banquet, story of Chinese food, which will, I assume, give all sorts of historical vignettes, but also maybe cultural stuff at the present moment. Chinese food is a huge hit everywhere in the world. It is arguably the most popular food export from one culture to all other cultures this side of pizza. But how many people know anything about it? And when you go for, you and your friends go out for Chinese because it's typically the most economical choice on offer, how much do you know about whether or not the Chinese food that you're getting under a certain name is anything like the traditional preparation of that name? This will be of intense interest to me, a little bit of melancholy as well, because for years, and I mean decades, whenever I was in the country, every week, every single week, on Friday, I packed up all that week's periodicals, The Nation, The New Republic, the National Geographic, the TLS, the London Times, the Literary Supplement, the London Review of Books, New York Review of Books, all of them. I packed up all the periodicals that arrived during that week, stuffed them in a bag, and brought them to a little hole-in-the-wall Chinese food restaurant in Boston, which wasn't really a restaurant. It almost qualified simply as the proprietor's kitchen. There was no sign outside, and the name of the place was in Chinese. Chinese was only ever spoken. I was the only one who ever spoke English in the place, and people did their best to speak English to me, and I got to know the proprietor, and then the proprietor's son, and then the proprietor's grandson. I got to know the family really well, and I went every week, took out those periodicals, and simply read through them at a snail's pace, annotating to my heart's delight, with the extra benefit of no one in the world knowing where I was, no one knowing where I was and being able to interrupt me in any way. I didn't bring my phone. Later on, when there was a phone, I didn't bring my phone, didn't bring anything like that. And needless to say, there was never any foot traffic in this place. Never at all. I was the only person who ever went in there, I think. That was blissful. And the melancholy part, of course, is that that's never going to happen again. I'm not going to resume that ritual at all. The closest that I came was a couple of years ago. I have neighbors up the hill, on the top of the ridge underneath which Hyde Cottage rests. That it's a multi-generational Chinese family, and they're wonderful people, just wonderful, friendly people. They once I got past their reserve, they're not all that good with English. Once I got past their reserve, and they knew that I was friendly, and especially once they realized years ago that my dogs were really old. I could get my girls up the hill for a while, and they would just sort of very slowly totter by. And these folk usually, they spend temperate weather sitting out on the porch, just talking and looking at the open air, much healthier than talking indoors. So they would see us go by. And then years passed, and then they saw me go by with a different dog, a little dog who paid attention to them. My girls did not pay attention to them. My girls couldn't see them, didn't know they were there. But my little schnauzer, who's on her beanbag now, so you're not going to see her, she paid attention to. So I got to know them, and they invited me over for dinner. And it was one of the rare occasions where I accepted such an invitation, and oh my, talk about traditional Chinese fare. So this is going to be of interest. I mean, this is be of interest to anybody. Is there anybody listening to me who's never had Chinese food? Then we have, this next one is a historical title. This is by Gary Bass. This is Judgment at Tokyo. A book on the Tokyo war crimes, the equivalent of the Nuremberg trials. And I haven't read a popular account of the Tokyo war crimes in decades. I don't remember the last time I read a book on this subject. So it's well up for reconsideration, especially if there are, I don't know, but maybe there are new troves of documents declassified by the Japanese government. I'm pretty sure that all of their documents were available the last time this subject was covered, but maybe the United States had documents that weren't open. Be very interested to see that sort of thing. I mean, I'll read it for the book. I'll read it for the narrative, for how well it's done. But when it comes to a history like this, I'm always interested to turn to the author's note or whatever and find out, is there anything actually new in here, or did you just think this subject was worth revising? I don't care either way. Same thing with Henry VIII and his marriage to Anne Boleyn. I don't care if you've encountered any new material. I care about how you do it. But I'm still going to be curious to know what would occasion this. Then we have something. This is by Adam Frank. This is a book for which there is absolutely no new information. So if the email questions along those lines could kindly stop, that would be great. This is The Little Book of Aliens. And this is the author going through what we know and don't know about alien life. Now, it's an active, viable question because every day almost we discover new exoplanets. Planets in distant solar systems that are rocky, that as far as we can estimate have atmospheres, and that maybe have water vapor or water, liquid water. There are thousands of those that have been discovered now, thousands of them. So any question that might have pertained years ago that maybe most of the planets out there are gas giants, and the highest likelihood we would find for anything like what we would recognize as life would happen on their moons, which we certainly could not detect. Any question of that is over. There are terrestrial Earth-like planets are common. If we can encounter thousands of them in just a few years of looking, they are common. And they are the shot for intelligent technological life. But we don't know about any of that life. And that life has not visited us. It has not come into close proximity with Earth cameras or Earth aircraft. I am not changing UFO to UAP or whatever you want me to now change my language to. These are unidentified flying objects. I'm pretty sure that the new acronym wants to acknowledge that they're not only unidentified, but not earthly, not terrestrial in origin. And they certainly are. So I'm going to stick with UFO. They are unidentified flying objects. They are basically drones being test piloted by other nations, or this nation. And the email questions about the guy who went in front of Congress and testified, it would be nice if instead of asking me that question, you watched the testimony. If you watch the testimony, your own instincts will tell you exactly the truth, which is that the guy is nuts. The guy who talked to Congress is insane. Now, I don't know how you get a hearing in front of Congress if you are self-evidently insane, but he's not the first person to have such a hearing. He is not telling anything that the government doesn't know about aliens from another dimension and how, did they speak to you and tell you, give you any wisdom about the lost continent of Atlantis, covering the microphone and saying, well, we have to talk about that with you in a skiff. I just can't talk about it here in front of all these people because who knows how many of them are lizard people. For Pete's sake. This book demystifies what we know and don't know about aliens. I'm hoping that it will be really enjoyable. And this next one, this is by Martin Williams. I cannot imagine that I will not enjoy this. I also cannot imagine there'll be many people who do. This is called The King is Dead, Long Live the King. And it is a study, I believe the author couches this, or maybe the publicity material that I read, couches this as there was a great outpouring of grief and commemoration of an era ending when Queen Elizabeth II ended. And the publicity material that I've read for this wants to the reader to remember or to know that that is not a unique phenomenon and that it happened when King Edward died. King Edward died and a new king came to the throne, and that was a tumultuous moment. And so this is going to be a study of my beloved Edwardian era and the Edwardian era coming to an end. Some eras can be long, so-called long eras. The long Victorian era, for instance, would it would be the whole of her reign, not just when she started to imprint her personality on it. The Edwardian era very discreetly started when Bertie became king, and it very discreetly ended when he died. So this will be taking me back to one of my favorite periods in English history. I don't know how much widespread appeal that is, but we shall see. When we talk about widespread appeal, this next author definitely has it. The temptation here is going to be to talk about late style. I bet I don't see anything like late style in this book. This is The Oceans and the Stars by Mark Helprin. Lovely U.S. cover there. This is a novel about a naval officer who runs afoul of the Navy Board and of a sitting president, gets his career sidelined and tries to make the best of it, finds love. It sounds like one of these big portmanteau things into which Mark Helprin can pour his distinctive narrative magic, which he has in bucket loads. That's why I resist the idea of anything like late style. Late style is usually the term that critics use when they don't want to say, this author has clearly lost a step. And I don't believe I'm going to encounter that with this. I really don't. I've been hearing rumors, intimations, implications of late style attached to this author for 20 years now. And the books are unbelievably powerful. They're unbelievably muscular and young, for want of a better word. This author's credit in the Bank of Steve could not be any higher. He wrote Winter's Tale, for instance, and lots of other things that I've loved. Almost due for a systematic reread. When he finally does die, I will certainly do that. I will read through all of his works. But if you're looking at new releases or forthcoming releases and you want a meat and potatoes prose writing that is gorgeous but actually tells a story and doesn't hate you, you can't do better than this author. So looking forward to it. Haven't got the finished copy yet. Then we have, this is by Benjamin Moser. This is Upside Down World, his book about the Dutch masters of painting and what it's like to read about them, to go and see their works on exhibit, to study their works in close detail, maybe for the purposes of writing a book. This will be a history, I'm sure, an art history, but it'll also, I'm hoping, be a lot of meditation, personal meditation on what these things, how they strike the author. That would be great. They are the Dutch masters are almost always a highlight of any art museum tour that I do, except for the syrupy narrative paintings of the Victorians, which I like more than anything. Not just Edwin Landseer, but all kinds of other people. You give me a Sir Lawrence Alma-Tadema, I am as happy as a clam. But the Dutch masters are no slouch in that department. So if this is personal and also retrospective and sort of aesthetic study, I'm all for it. And then this last one, I want you to know ahead of time that I did bring this to the proper authorities. This is edited by Jonathan Mayberry, who I've mentioned on this channel a few times before as a writer I really like. And he has edited a new anthology of weird tales. 100 years of selections. It's 100 years since Weird Tales started production. The magazine, Weird Tales, started production. No idea if some strung out little descendant of Weird Tales is still being published, but it was a seminal and incredibly important pulp magazine that broke a lot of new ground in a lot of genres, created a lot of genres, and the roster of writers who wrote for them includes lots of names that you would know. So a Weird Tales anthology is a great idea. And of course, I brought this to the authority in question, Michael K. Vaughan. I brought this to his attention. Although we both bemoan the fact that this is like 200 and something pages long, when it should be 1,000 pages long. The last Weird Tales anthology was twice the length of this one. That was what? That you aficionados will know the one I'm talking about. It was like from 40 years ago. Why is this so short? Is going to be my main question. Not even a question of what kind of a selection job Jonathan Mayberry does. For all I know, he'll do a really good selection job. But how good a selection job can you be if you're doing that small a sliver of the treasure trove of Weird Tales? Where is the phone book size Weird Tales anthology? with a lot of the artwork that was in those original pages. What I wouldn't give to see that. But this is coming out. Those of you who are Weird Tales aficionados, or if you know somebody who loves fantasy and fantasy horror, this anthology is coming out, and you really can't go wrong. You really can't go wrong with Weird Tales. And there you go. That is just 10 random books for you on a hot, hazy, humid Sunday. Predictions of thunderstorms. Yesterday, the apps on my phone were telling me that it was 80 degrees Fahrenheit in Boston and 80% humidity. But the sensor on my phone was telling me correctly that at the middle of the day it was 100 degrees Fahrenheit and 98% humidity. So 80 degrees Fahrenheit and 80% humidity is bad but bearable. When looking at that information, I thought, okay, well, the Bean and I can go for a medium walk. We got outside to the surface of Venus. And just the apps had been wrong. They'd been lying. They'd been massaging their data to make you like them by giving you a favorable version of reality that doesn't obtain. And I walked the Bean for a little bit of time, and we were both devastated. We got back, took us an hour to recover. Because in 97% humidity, you can't breathe. And foam or mold is forming in your lungs. And when I was back and we were panting and I was trying to make sure she was okay, I was excoriating the apps that were also promising thunderstorms in the afternoon, but then I got my ration of crow because thunderstorms did come in the afternoon all over New England. They did. In fact, if you listen to Vin at Revenant Reads did a Star Trek tag video, and you can hear the thunderstorms in his background at the moment. And those are being promised again today. The promise again today is that although it's hot and humid and hazy now, there are going to be thunderstorms all afternoon. We shall see. I'm not going to discount it anymore. But those are some books to while away. You're going to put those on your list and see which ones you like and don't like. Any that jump out at you that maybe you want from me. If I get a finished copy of any of these and one of these is your dream come true, feel free to let me know. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.